All right, so we have 3 tasks to accomplish today. We want to start off, and I'd like to hear about your mediations in the San Diego Small Claims Court. We're then going to turn to a discussion of caucusing and the choices of moving into caucus as opposed to staying in joint session, and when you might want to make that decision and what your goals are in making that decision. And then lastly, we will talk a little bit about some of the methods, some of the mechanisms that mediators use to close the final gap. So I'd like to start off hearing about your mediations in court. And Stuart, let me start with you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the facts. So let's move on to talking about the choice to caucus. And a number of you have mentioned, if not this week, then in weeks past, that you moved into caucus. And so my question is, why did you move into caucus at that particular moment? Tim? Are there goals that cannot be achieved in caucus? I guess another way of asking that question is, why might you want to stay in joint session? I know that most law students really love caucus, but can you think of some situations where it would probably be more prudent to stay in joint session? Let's talk about what some of the benefits of this kind of approach are and what some of the drawbacks are. So looking at these methods from the standpoint now, switching roles from the third party neutral to the parties themselves, what's attractive about final offer arbitration?
Be efficient.
Yeah.
Very efficient.
Yeah, okay. So you just come up with a number that you're willing to live with and you present it to the mediator. In terms of continuing on this efficiency strand, what is efficient about this process in terms of helping the parties get to settlement? What does this process or this method incentivize the parties to do? If you are entering into a process knowing that no matter what, the mediator is not going to be empowered to make a final decision or pick between 2 numbers, might you have a different approach to that mediator than if you knew that at the end of the mediation it's very possible that your mediator might be engaging in final offer arbitration? How would that affect your approach to the mediator in the process? Again, poses the same difficulty that we saw with final offer arbitration. Now, if you know that the mediation may end with the mediator's proposal, you're not just using the mediator as a facilitator or as a communication enhancer. You are thinking about the mediator as someone who at some point might develop a number upon which he or she thinks the case should settle, right? So you find yourself being tempted to move into a persuasive mode with the mediator as opposed to using him or her as a negotiation assist. Okay, and last but not least, confidential disclosure of bottom lines. What happens in this mechanism? This is also plays into the theme of trust, right? That you might offer a very realistic assessment of what your bottom line is, your walkaway point. But if the other side is still inflating demands, then that sort of defeats the purpose of the exercise, right? The mediator comes back and says, you are just way too far apart. Or if the mediator comes back and says, well, I think we should still keep working, the other side has anchored the discussions at a more favorable range, right? So there are some risks associated with that mechanism.